Let's dive right in, Josh. We've got 4 guys from this weekend that we want to talk about. You have not put in any future cast predictions for folks you didn't have one in for already. One that you did have in already was the brother of Gerard Smith, Jacob Smith, who was here this weekend. He's got a visit next weekend for Nebraska, then Kentucky, and then an interesting scenario. He's coming back with his brother to come to Michigan one more time after that. So what are you hearing with the second Smith brother?
Yeah, I think just more positivity than what I had already heard to begin with. The talk was that it was going to be eventually, but Michigan would secure the commitment of Jacob Smith after Gerard committed. But yeah, I mean, I think this visit just kind of really made my confidence grow in placing my future cast. I placed it, I don't know how long it was, like 2 weeks ago, I think. And now I feel pretty good about where it sits right now. So, and for people who are regular listeners to us, I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum, that it's very rare where twins go their separate ways when it comes to recruiting. So I think that the family pull will win out in the end. But, I think if you look at the contenders for Smith, you've got a Nebraska and you got Kentucky involved there. I really like where Michigan is in that competition. I think if you're a Michigan fan and you're looking at those two, those two programs, I think, from a scheme wise perspective, I think Michigan's in a better spot.
He's a great fit. We talked about that previously as well.
Yeah. So it's hard not to like Michigan's system as their, where it stands right now. But I think his relationship, both the Smith brothers' relationship with Mike Elston is a key here. Elston is a strong recruiter, and he's really flexing his muscles a little bit here in 2024 with not only landing the Smith brothers, but who they could potentially land down the line here. So continue to feel good about where Michigan sits. I don't think anything is imminent. We'll see what happens after this stretch of visits, and obviously he will visit again towards the end of the month when Gerard Smith officially visits. But yeah, I mean, tough not to feel good about where things sit right now.
I like that timeline. He'll take his next couple visits, Nebraska, Kentucky, come back with his brother, and wouldn't be shocked if we see something end of June for him.
Yep.
Another edge type player who we've talked about a lot had his official visit, has been to Ann Arbor more than me, I think. Brian Robinson. Again, we feel like this has kind of been trending, I don't want to say away. He's been coming quite a bit, but after this OV, is he closer, or we kind of feel like maybe this might not be a match happening anymore?
Yeah, he's a weird one. It's interesting. When you think about an official visitor, you typically go, well, this got worse, or well, these guys have gone further away. But I do think he had a good official. I do think he had a good visit, but I don't see the match. I'm not as confident that we see a match there. He's had many opportunities to make a commitment. Michigan's pushed for a commitment and nothing's happened. So I think they're at the point now where, there's going to be guys ahead of him in the pecking order, and B, he'll likely end up waiting himself out of a spot because, the way Michigan's defensive end recruiting, I mean, we just talked about Jacob and Gerard Smith. So both of those guys are going to be in the class. They play the same position. Excuse me, or a type of edge position. But yeah, I mean, the Michigan could, realistically be full at defensive end at the end of the summer. It's not a guarantee, and it's not a for sure thing that's going to happen, but there's a realistic possibility that could happen. So I still have my future cast in for Michigan right now. However, my confidence, the longer this goes on, the less confident I am it's going to be Michigan. And really right now, I'm not very confident that it's going to be, but I think that's kind of what I said on the website today, this morning when I posted, my notes. I think, the longer this goes on, the less likely it's going to be Michigan. And it might not even be Michigan now anyway. So, he's got, like Gerard's Jacob Smith, Kentucky and Nebraska are in this thing. Both of them are recruiting him hard, and who knows, Ohio State may come calling at some point. I don't know that for sure, but that's a possibility if they miss out on some guys. So, I don't see Brian Robinson factoring into the defensive end equation right now. My confidence is quickly fading, but the future cast is still in. I haven't heard anything definitive, and then once I do, that's when I'll do the necessary reactionary thing to it. But a bit of a weird situation.
The Kentucky visit, which is next week for him, I think will be a big one.
Yeah.
Well, if any, he's a pretty quiet recruit overall. I mean, he's very public on his social media profile about himself and his work, but recruiting wise, we haven't heard a ton. I'll see what comes out of that Kentucky visit, and then Penn State after that is an interesting one.
Yeah.
And then you're right, if Ohio State comes around, pretty common programs involved for an Ohio edge linebacker kid, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about relationships. One guy with a lot of relationships to this program, wide receiver out of Providence Day, teammate of Jaden Davis, Jordan Shipp, took his official visit this week. I'm not 100% sure, but is that the first time he's come without either Channing or Davis?
I believe he came once without.
Yeah,
he's obviously he came without one guy. I think he's either come with one guy or both. I don't know if this is the first time he's been without them, but
either way, very much his own thing.
Yeah.
What are we hearing about Mr. Shipp?
Yeah, it's another interesting recruitment. A lot of things make sense for Michigan here. Obviously Jaden Davis and Shannon Goodwin committed. High school teammates. I really there's confidence within Michigan, but there really hasn't been anything definitive from Shipp's side of the.
He was always the one of the three that felt less.
Yeah, and I still think that
Davis was the main target. Goodwin obviously is a legacy recruit. So.
Yeah, and I still think it's a possibility that he stays in North Carolina. I feel good about where Michigan sits coming out of this visit, but I'm not ready to sit here and pound the table and saying he's for sure coming. I think, again, like Robinson, I don't know what else you need to see. I think Michigan pretty much laid it all on the table for him in this visit. So at this point, you're either going to take it or leave it. So that's another guy where Michigan's got options at wide receiver. So it's not like they're desperately waiting on him to make a decision. They got a Marion Stewart who's highly factored in and who's long since been talked about as not necessarily a lock, but a guy who is leaning towards Michigan. And then you got McCue White too, who Seth posted a story on this week's and Seth's been all over McCue White, but he's a guy that's openly saying that Michigan's the leader. I mean, he's not even hiding it, not even hinting it, not even beating around the bush. He's just openly saying Michigan is my number one school right now. So I think Shipp is more of the McCue White type of player. They're both similar in stature. And Marion Stewart is more of the big guy. So again, someone's going to be waiting themselves out of a spot if Jordan Shipp is a legitimate option. I do think they're up there for him, but I think North Carolina, NC State have really recruited him well, and it wouldn't at all be surprising to see him, go just stay in the home state. So I think if Michigan does get him, I think it'd be huge for a guy like David Sanders in 2025, one of the top players in the class that also goes to Providence Day that Michigan's in on. I believe he's an offensive lineman. That'd be huge, huge for him. That kid's a stud. So we'll see. Another again, we're so many of these position groups. We're like, well, this talented guy might wait himself out of a spot
Yeah.
in place of another talented guy. So there's a lot of moving pieces that still need to be fit in and all that good stuff. But I do like where Michigan sits right now. I'm not going to sit here and say Michigan's leader. Michigan is, this is a imminent thing, but I think Michigan gave it a really good shot, and probably this might be their last shot to really lay it on the table for Shipp. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and we're in full on visit season. He's heading to NC State.
Yeah,
You mentioned that next week. I think North Carolina probably would have been the leader by a decent margin before their OC went to Wisconsin.
yeah,
So we'll
yeah,
see what goes on there.
yeah,
And then, I mean, you brought up Amir Stewart. He just had a pretty interesting visit to Wisconsin that I just mentioned.
yeah.
So, I mean, we're going to learn a lot in June. But yeah, it was nice to see Shipp come up. And then, yeah, like I said, we'll probably learn more in the next week or two there.